Hi everyone, I'm Angela and welcome to Crafting with Angela. This is your new go-to place for all things paper crafting. Whether you've been crafting for a while now or are just starting out, you'll find a variety of tips, tutorials and inspiration here. In today's video, I will be showing you another 5 ways to make cards using washi tape. This is part of my Frugal Friday playlist, which means that I will be using minimal supplies during the video. You can find a list of the supplies I used in the description box below. First card we're going to do today is using washi tape to create a background. This card would suit any occasion depending on the washi tape and sentiment stamp used. I've cut a square of card half an inch smaller than the card base. I'm going to use this card as a Father's Day card, so I've chosen 6 blue and green tapes that I think match that sentiment. You can use 2 or more tapes to complete this pattern. It would look just as good with 2 as it does with the 6. What you want to do is roughly measure a piece of washi tape to fit diagonally across the card, glue it and then stick it down onto the background. I'm repeating the pattern with each of the different washi tapes. I roughly measure the tape, then glue it and stick it onto the card. I'll repeat this until the pattern covers the entire piece of card. Once the card is completely covered with washi tape, I will turn it over and fold the ends down. If any of the pieces are too long, I will trim them down before sticking them down onto the card. This helps prevent any tape peeling up on the front of the card. For the corners, I'll trim the excess to just longer than the corner point, so that gives a good edge from the front. Now I'm going to add glue stick to the back of the card, making sure to cover the edges and corners. Then once it's covered in glue, I will centre it on the card base and press it down. To finish this card, I'm going to add the sentiment onto the front of it. I'll do this by stamping the sentiment onto a scrap of white card. When you're stamping, make sure you press down well and give enough time for the ink to transfer onto the page. Then I'm going to fussy cut the sentiment out. Whenever you are fussy cutting, it's easier to hold the scissors still and move the paper. In case I've missed any spots when fussy cutting, I'm then going to go around the edges with the ink pad and make sure they're all black. Make sure you angle the ink pad away from the front of the sentiment to avoid getting any marks on the front. As this is a small sentiment, it'll get lost on the front of the card, so I'm going to add a matte layer behind it. Again, this is from scrap card, and I'm going to cut it about ½ an inch bigger than the sentiment. I didn't measure it at this stage, I just eyeballed it. I'm going to cover the mat with washi tape. I had to decide which tape I wanted to use, and after thinking about it, I decided to use the glitter tape. You only need to add the glitter washi to the edges of the mat where it's going to be visible. Then glue the sentiment on top of the map and stick it to the front of the card. And that's the first card completed. So the second card is making a heart-shaped washi background. This is similar to the previous card, except this time I have sketched out a heart shape on scrap card and I'm cutting it out. This card could be good for Valentine's Day or an anniversary. You could also do different shapes, such as a star or a balloon for different occasions. Similar to the first card, you want to stick the tape across the shape. This time I'm adding the glue to the shape rather than to the tape. I'm going to repeat all the washi tape until the shape is covered. When I was covering the shape, I noticed that the one side of the heart is slightly wonkier at the top than the other, so I'm going to trim it down when I trim the tips down. Remember that tape will stick to your scissors when you're trimming it, so you'll need to stop and clean them at times. Once the shape is covered, I'm going to stamp the sentiment onto the card, then add glue stick to the shape and add it to the card base. Normally, if I was sticking stamping sentiments like this onto a card, I would use my stamp positioner, because I think when you're using words, it's always good to make sure that if it doesn't stamp properly the first time, you have a chance to re-stamp it instead of wasting everything. But a stamp position doesn't really work with the idea of Frugal Friday, so we're not using it at this stage. But if you have one, do feel free to use it.
And that's the second card completed. The third card is using washi tape to create a banner. This is a simple card and I'm going to use it as a congratulations card. In fact, I won't even be using any sentiment stamps on this card. What I'm going to do is create a fishtail banner shape from the washi tape. To do that, I cut strips of tape about 1.5 or 2 inches long, then cut up in the centre and cut diagonally out to each corner so it gives you a fishtail. I then start to glue the tape down from the edges and work into the centre. That allows me to make sure that the spacing is correct. As I mentioned, this is going to be a congratulations card, so I want to write congrats onto the banner. That means I'll need 8 pieces for each banner, 1 for each letter. So if you're doing a banner for happy, for example, you'd use 5 pieces, or for thanks, you'd use 6. Once the banner is completed, I'm coming in with my black marker, drawing a line across the top for the banner to hang on, and then writing a letter on each piece. It's not really clear on the video, but in real life you can make out the G on that blue striped tape. And that's the third card completed. The fourth card is going to be using stripes of washi tape. For this card, I am going to be sticking strips of washi tape into a crisscross pattern that's crossing slightly off-centered. This will be a Mother's Day card, so I've chosen 4 tapes in a variety of colours and widths that work for Mother's Day. I'm going to stick the tape directly onto the card base. What I'm going to do is take my first piece of tape and stick it diagonally across the card. I will have one wider and one narrower strip at each section. I'll repeat that until all 4 tapes are used. Then I'll trim the excess tape off. I'm going to stamp the sentiment onto a scrap piece of card and then fussy cut it out. Again, I'll come in with the ink pad to go around the edges so that you can't see any mistakes that I've made with my fussy cutting. Then I am going to add a glitter washi matte layer behind the sentiment to help it stand out. And it is going to be glued down into the cross at the centre. And that's the fourth card finished. The fifth card today is going to be making flowers out of washi tape. This card is going to be a Happy Teacher's Day card. And I'm going to put the sentiment at the top of the card. So I've placed it there to remind me of that. I'm only using 2 washi tapes on this card, but I'm going to make 3 flowers. In order to make a flower, you want to cut strips of tape and glue them a crisscross to make a flower shape on the card. There will be 1 larger flower in the centre, which will have 6 petals, and 2 smaller flowers at each side, which will have 8 petals. I have some old buttons here from my stash that I'm going to use as the centres of the flowers. I'm going to use glue stick to add them to the card, but depending on the button, you may need to use a stronger glue such as PVA. When you are sticking buttons down, do remember to try and stick the flat side down as it will give more surface area to stick to. Now I'm going to stamp the sentiment at the top of the page. Once that's completed, I'm going to come in with my black marker and draw stems and leaves for each of the flowers. I'll make the stem of the bigger flower slightly thicker than the other two to keep it in proportion. And that's the final card completed. Now let's have a look at all 5 finished cards.